You all are very obedient when the lights go down. I'm Katie Lee Coven, the Executive Director for the Nora Eccles Harrison Museum of Art and curator for the exhibition, The Crick, by Jim Mangan. And I'm very excited for us to have Jim here this evening to speak about his journey as an artist and to discuss his work, including the multi-year project, The Crick. I'm sure some of you saw the information about the exhibition and thought, wow, an exhibition documenting the lives of young men from Short Creek, the FLDS community that Warren Jeffs once controlled. That seems a little risky. All of us, though, have parts of our past that we may want to distance ourselves from. But sometimes I think instead of distancing ourselves, we should lean into that past to better understand it instead of putting it over in a box off to the side. I'm honored to do the work that I do because I think museums uniquely provide a space for those stories and histories to be shared through art, where we can ask you to reflect and to find connection. And it's a place where there's, no right or wrong answer or right or wrong response. I think maybe we need museums right now in this moment in history more than maybe any time in our past. In the 43 years of the Nora Eccles Harrison Museum of Art's existence here at Utah State University, we've always been committed to presenting and collecting art that connects and resonates with our community and visitors, while also encouraging us to pause, to question, and to reconsider our vantage point about maybe it's a particular style of painting or the subject matter in a photograph. In my time at NEHMA, we've presented a number of exhibitions that push boundaries and take us a bit out of our comfort zone. But for me, the most important thing is the sensitivity and how we present the work or the topic, which makes all the difference. We just closed the exhibition about the Intermountain Intertribal Indian School and the murals, for example, which I think all of us can agree is a complicated part of our history as Americans or as Native Americans or as Utahns. And I was incredibly nervous to open that exhibition, even though we went through great lengths to build relationships with former students and teachers who were there and scholars and sought their guidance to ensure that what and how we presented that material was respectful and honest. Jim Mangan created this body of work with that same level of sensitivity. And that really resonated with me when the work was introduced to me. In addition to the fact that the photographs are just arresting in their beauty. Compositionally and technically, they're immersive. I was introduced to Jim Mangan's work by a former photography faculty here, and within the same week, Judith Freeman, who you'll meet tonight, an incredible novelist, originally from Ogden, based in LA. I came to know Judith, she emailed me, but I came to know her through a happenstance story involving Micah McKinney, who may be here tonight. She's the former attorney here at the university, and she had dropped a book of Judith's off at my front door one day because she thought I would enjoy it. And literally 2 weeks later, Judith was in our museum randomly. But there's a longer story there, but a lovely one. And Judith said in her email to me, you should look at this artist's work. So I paid attention. So this is Jim's first solo museum exhibition, and we are proud to feature artists like Jim who deserve attention and to bring their work to a larger audience. It's always been central to the practice at NEHMA, and I want to thank our museum board members, our donors, and our staff for making this possible. And I also want to thank the Utah State University leadership, who's always been incredibly supportive in the work that we do. The exhibition, Jim Mangan, The Crick, is presented as a complementary group of exhibitions. The larger exhibition in the main gallery, when you go on the first floor of the museum, The Lore and Lore of the West, was curated by Danielle Stewart, and she'll be moderating the panel discussion tonight. So as you go through the galleries during the reception, I hope you'll join us after the talk. Each of the exhibitions present different ways artists are experiencing the West. So Jim is going to speak for about 15 or so minutes, and then he'll be joined on stage by Danielle, our curator and head of academic initiatives, who'll moderate the talk. Roman Bateman, a community member from Short Creek, Ephraim Barlow, one of the young men who is included in the photographs and part of that community as well, and novelist Judith Freeman. And Danielle's going to ask the panel some questions, but then we also will have time for you to ask questions. And there are microphones at the front of each of the aisles, so please do that and think about some questions you would like to ask. There's also a beautiful, beautiful book in conjunction with this exhibition and body of work. And it is within the exhibit, so you can check that out. There's an essay by Judith in the book, as well as a poem by Roman. And you can sign up at the front desk if you would like a copy of the book. We will be ordering them, and then we'll get one to you at a discounted price. So now that I've spoken a lot about Jim Mangan's work and how it came to be here, let me introduce you to Jim Mangan. So Jim Mangan is an American photographer and filmmaker, primarily known for his unique approaches, his unique landscapes of the American West. Mangan takes an ecological and sociological approach to his work, observing his subjects and their interactions with their environment. His work seeks to forge a sense of connectivity with the earth and of disparate communities. For nearly a quarter century, he lived in Colorado and Utah to study water rights and drought habitats, leading to his current career in photography and filmmaking. Mangan was a 2023 Light Work Artist in Residence. For 5 years, he immersed himself in the critically acclaimed body of work currently in the museum, the Crick, which included a publication by Twin Palms Publishers. Vince Aletti referred to the Crick as an instant classic in his review of the book in Photograph magazine. The New York Times published a photo essay of this series titled Young Men of the Crick in September 2023. And in 2025, the Belfast Photo Festival in Ireland named the Crick and Mangan among its exhibition winners. Over the past 2 years, this body of work has been featured in a number of exhibitions in LA and in Kyoto and in Amsterdam. And Jim's work is in the permanent collections of Light Work in Syracuse, New York, MoMA Catalog in New York, Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago Artist Book Collection, and the New York Public Library. And he has exhibited his work in Germany, the Everson Museum, Art Museum in Syracuse, and also at Utah Museum of Contemporary Art. And he's been published in The New Yorker, New York Times, New York Magazine, Sleek, Vice, The California Sunday, Vogue, National Geographic, Time, and Harper's Magazine. And so with that, please help me welcome Jim Mangan to the stage.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's great. Thank you. How y'all doing? Thanks for being here. I'd like to thank Katie, the whole crew at NEHMA, all the young men of the Crick, Judith, Roman, just for really enriching this work, for making this work happen. It couldn't have happened without you guys, and I really, really appreciate it. It's a tremendous honor to talk about this work, and to reflect on past work that brought me to this point. Not only this project, but oops. I just did something crazy here, sorry. Here, wait. Okay, start this. Okay, here we go. Okay, so not only this project, but my photography practice as a whole has taken me on a ride that I never could have imagined. Many of us know Ralph Waldo Emerson's oft-quoted line, "It's not the destination, it's the journey." It can sound cliche, but those words didn't fully resonate with me until later in life when I began to reflect on them more thoughtfully as I looked back on the life I've lived and the one I live now. I've become grateful for my slow burn instead of the constant hope for rapid success and instant gratification that derails so many of us, including the version of me that once chased it. I've come to realize that living by these words not only sustains an art practice, but makes life much more meaningful. When we earn it, we learn more about ourselves and the world in a way we could never understand if what we desired were just handed to us. I can't imagine a more meaningful way to pursue this path or a more essential companion than having a camera by my side, documenting it all. My practice is grounded in the belief that there are three sides to every story: yours, mine, and the one that exists outside of both. The triadic perspective invites a more nuanced vision, refusing easy binaries and embracing complexity. I present questions about the world around us, the spaces we inhabit, the choices we make, and the double standards most people carry, often without naming them aloud. What does it mean to navigate memory, responsibility, and the desire when every encounter is mediated by perspective? Through photography, I pursue images that crystallize that tension, inviting viewers into the in-between, where the truth remains provisional and simplifications are refused. Admittedly, a great photograph is my ultimate goal. I trust a compelling image can speak for itself, carrying an argument that lingers longer than any text. In this way, the work is both inquiry and invitation, a prompt to reconsider how we see and who we are when we look. And now we'll start the slideshow here, and I'll start talking to you a little bit about my past work and how it's led to the Crick. And there's really so much more I could talk about from my past and what led to this initial body of work that I'm presenting to you up here in this time period, but I figured within the 15 minutes I have up here, this is a great place to start and a great way to show you a few bodies of work that have informed the Crick and how I got there. This initial project is titled Time of Nothing, and Time of Nothing, which I made from 2011 to 2013, was photographed from a single-engine Cessna at approximately 1,500 feet above the Great Salt Lake and its surrounding terrain. With sparse signs of human life, the land itself seems to breathe. The solar ponds yield a hallucinatory spectrum of unedited color that nearly obscures the traces of the man-made world beneath. The colors come through from naturally occurring organisms, brine shrimp and algae that bloom in response to salinity and water levels. While the irregular dense tracks and bruises on the salt flats reveal human impact, I sought to capture a moment when lush ecosystems are celebrated by viewers yet decimated by manufacturers. The terrain, natural, surreal, and synthetic, appears reshaped by mineral extraction and industrial machinery. Capturing movement is a big part of my practice, and with this series remains a persistent thread, even as Time of Nothing reads as still. Filmed from a Cessna in constant forward motion, the landscape translates motion into perception. Horizons glide, color fields shift, and textures flicker between presence and absence. The still image is photographically earned through flight, a paradox that aligns with the triadic view, yours, mine, and the world beyond us. In this sense, the act of capturing the moment becomes a method, inviting viewers to consider not only what the land reveals, but how velocity shapes what they are invited to see. Part of what I did with this work was, I chose a Cessna really over a helicopter because of where I was at monetarily. I couldn't afford a helicopter that just seemed unattainable. And I had a roommate at the time who was a student pilot. And I asked him if I could go up with him and his instructor who owned the plane. And he ended up just introducing me to the instructor, and the instructor was more than happy to bring me up, not only with Nick, my roommate, but with other students. And he felt like it would allow for a great exercise for the student to listen to sort of my commands and how to navigate the air through what I wanted to photograph. And so when I was up there, I used a Leica S camera, which is, not a Leica S. I used a Leica R for this series, a Leica R3, and it was made in 1978. It's a 35 millimeter SLR camera, and I photographed these images with both the windows open on the Cessna and with the windows closed. And the fastest shutter speed on this camera was 1/1000th. So much slower than what most modern day SLRs are today. And what I realized was, oh my God, sorry, I thought my phone was off. What I realized today, or what I realized when I was up there, was that having the windows closed, along with the elevation that we were flying at 1,500 feet, which is a very turbulent level to fly at, altitude to fly at. The 1/1000th would have, if you wanted to capture an image that didn't look like there was any shake or movement, that wasn't fast enough. But it was fast enough for the images that I wanted to create. It created some movement, and it allowed for them to become painterly. And so it created these painterly images, which is really what I wanted to try and capture as I was, trying to go also beyond what the image itself was going to portray. But anyway, and I decided to also keep the window closed opposed to open. That provided another filter that allowed the images to create the look and feel I was looking for. As you can see up here, these images become they're more saturated in this type of presentation, but I guess, you get the gist. And you can see the man-made, this is a man-made salt path within one of the solar ponds. And where the, salt, magnesium, all these things are being harvested from. And the salt, the magnesium itself was one of the things that drew me to the Great Salt Lake. And understanding that even during this time, this degradation, this sort of idea that the lake was starting to be lost. And I wanted to capture it before it was gone. I didn't know, even at this particular time when that would happen, but I wanted to capture it, and I wanted to tell some of its story. And so here, this is, to me, an interesting photo because it's where salt, right, this salt patch, that in itself is uninhabitable, is meeting up with this vegetation, right, and where all these ecosystems exist. And so it's kind of like the salt is foreshadowing what's to come. And you get this motion, this salt in the solar ponds, and you get these, again, these different hues, these different colors based on the level of water, salinity, brine, the brine shrimp, the algae, all these things create the different types of colors that you see. And that's just that's salt that's been harvested, and then that's just a black body of water, a solar pond. And then the wind is blowing the salt over the border. And then you can see where machinery is pushing through from the solar pond and where the salt has been extracted. And then this road that sits in between where this salt's being pushed out by machinery. Blast. So blast comes after Time of Nothing in 2014. It extends the triadic inquiry of Time of Nothing into another form of motion. Traveling across a 75-mile stretch of BLM land from Capitol Reef to Goblin Valley, with rally car driver Ken Block, the project seeks to put the landscape in motion and reveals a paradoxical relationship of friction and harmony, a way in which all of us interact with the earth while often unaware. My initial impulse was to fixate on the dirt and dust, but the car, a distinctly human man-made machine, emerges as a central actor, visually and metaphorically. These locations permit motorized access, yet have been predominantly traversed by dirt bikes, underscoring a shift in how speed, presence, and evidence reshape our understanding of the landscape. Through Blast, I examine how velocity and exposure govern perception, and how the social and ecological systems moving through the land invite us to reconsider our affection for nature alongside our complicity in its destruction, the beauty in the dirt and dust, and yet the violence it creates. And so Ken Block, who I collaborated with this, was a good friend of mine. We'd known each other for years through working in the same industry together, and then both moving in different directions, where he became a professional rally car driver, one of the best, if not the best in the world. And he became the most famous rally car driver in the world because of his creativity outside of racing. And so I had this idea. I'd been sitting on it for a couple of years, and him and I would meet occasionally. He'd have me over for dinner or a party or whatever, and so on one of these occasions, he asked me why we had never collaborated, and if I ever had an idea, to let him know, and he would love to do something together. And I'd been sitting on this idea forever, and I told him right there and then what it was, and he said, let's do it. And so it took a few months with his schedule. It took some planning, it took some time, but we headed out, as you can see in what I said, into the southern Utah desert for this unbelievable experience. And these are the results. And so you can see the architecture of the dirt and dust, which I discussed, the machine itself. And yes, it speaks metaphorically to what I believe, how we all navigate this world, whether we are aware of it or not. We drive our cars, we fly planes, we generally have in our system a large carbon footprint on the world. And so, again, my reasoning for this is not to judge, it's more to just question how we exist, who we are, and where we stand. Oh, I'm sorry, and where we stand. Let me move forward here. And so this is without the car, and this was the initial idea, was to show the entire project in this kind of way, and capturing, again, these different formations of dirt and dust. But you can see how crucial the car is to the story. This is at Swing Arm City. This is a place that is heavily used by dirt bikes, and this was the first time a car utilized this area beyond the, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. My phone is in my bag over here. It's going through my computer. I apologize. Thank you. This is shot, so I shot this project from the ground, from hillsides, mountainsides, and from a helicopter. And through Ken, I was able to do that. He funded this project, and so I had the luxury of also going up in a helicopter to photograph this project. And there's also a short film attached to it. And so now we enter this body of work titled Dark Electric. And I've changed the name of this project a couple times. I do like this name. And I'll get into that another time, but Dark Electric, as it relates to these specific photographs, there's a larger body of work to this, but I wanted to kind of hone in on these specific images and talk about the horse mostly. Dark Electric, as it relates to these specific photographs, was made between 2017 and 2023. It continues the triadic inquiry I began with Time of Nothing and expanded through Blast, placing a singular, unbroken black Mustang galloping wildly across the Bonneville Salt Flats, in addition to a car presented as a blur, representing the very thing that may play a consequential role to our longevity. A landscape that is both uninhabitable and ecologically barren. Viewers often read the photographs at a glance, but the work foreshadows a prophetic urgency. A world increasingly precarious, where a frantic search for survival plays out against a horizon that seems to forget itself. The horse emerges as a central figure, visually and metaphorically. The horse's motion, though continuous, feels fleeting within the stark salt, serving as a metaphor for existence and the ephemeral state of the natural world. I want to ask how our affection for nature coexists with our complicity in its degradation. Dark electric invites a reflection on velocity, duration, and the fragility of life as the landscape itself becomes a site of inquiry. That's a car that I shot long exposure. This was probably, I don't know, this could have been around 5 a.m. in the morning in October of 2023. I shot the horse. The man who owned the man who owns the horse, his name is Noe, and he lives in Windover. And I met him through another person who I reached out to searching for a black horse. And she referred me to Noe. And Noe became an integral part of this project, of course, with his horse. And he would drive his horse out with his pickup and trailer to the salt flats. And he'd always bring a ranch hand alongside him. And what we would do is he would not only bring this black horse, but he would also bring a mare to have the horse chased, and they would tie the mare to the back of the pickup, and we wouldn't drive at a super fast pace, but just fast enough to get the black horse moving, and it would follow us because it wanted to mount the mare. And then we had Noe's ranch hand. He'd always have a different ranch hand back there, and he would shoo the black horse away from the mare. And so it allowed me to take photos of it and try to capture these really particular moments. I have so many photos from this, but there's the ones that just really hit and resonate, and to me they have purpose and intention, and so that's what I was really going for, and I keep expanding on this work, and it keeps evolving into different chapters in different ways, and not just with the horse itself. This is caused by chemical. So I took unprocessed film and I soaked it. I've done this over a decade, where I've soaked unprocessed film in salt water from both the Great Salt Lake and the salt flats, and for different periods of time. And so this is the chemical degradation that occurs when you do that. And I wanted to leave that physical imprint on the photograph and in the print itself. And so this is just an added layer to what is sort of occurring in that particular area. And this is where magnesium is being mined. This is actually U.S. magnesium. And then this is really part of what helped. This was shot in 2012, and this was one of the aerial photos that I took that I didn't use in the book that was published for Time and Nothing, but I felt this was an important photo to include because it was inspirational for the Black Horse project, along with some other things that I was doing at the time. But this was one of those photos that helped lead to that. And there's a photo in the Crick, and I didn't include it in this one, but it ties into this. This photo informed, and we'll talk about it in the panel discussion, hopefully, when I catch it up on the screen, but it very much was informed by this. And it was in a split second when it was happening, but I was drawing from this. Red Room. So this particular bodywork, in 2018, in early September, a day after having photographed the Black Mustang in the Salt Flats, I traveled to Las Vegas, spending a couple nights at the Red Dragon Hotel, a place that would soon vanish without any prior knowledge to the fact that its demise was imminent and it would soon shut down. It was during this stay that I began a sort of short-lived visual journey, attempting to capture the essence of this iconic city through a unique filter, the maddening red transparent curtains and rose-tinted windows that overwhelmed my hotel room. I wanted to present Las Vegas not through digital manipulation, but through the natural lens of my surroundings. The red curtains became a metaphor for how we perceive the world. And these are the red curtains here. And as you can see, I'm photographing architecture as well. Even in this, the building in the back. And so the red curtains became a metaphor for how we perceive the world, filtered and sometimes obscured. To me, the red hue symbolizes more than just a color. It represents the air we breathe, the unseen pollution, and the wildfires that have become all too common in the West. It reflects the challenges we face in our environment, impacting both humanity and wildlife. Las Vegas epitomizes a paradox of dreams and reality. It's a city where the allure of winning big is ever present, yet the stakes are often stacked against us. Through these photographs, I sought to convey an alternate perspective, a way of seeing that encourages reflection on our surroundings, both literally and figuratively. And you can see this is, again, through the curtains and the buildings and the curtains themselves pulled away from my bed in my room. And now, the Crick, what you've all been waiting for. And so all of my past work leads to and informs the Crick, a project that began soon after my stay at the Red Dragon Hotel in Las Vegas. The Crick extends the triadic inquiry I began with Time of Nothing and deepened through Blast, Dark Electric, and Red Room, moving from aerial and kinetic readings to grounded encounters with architecture in the form of evidence and narrative. I initially visited the Crick to document the unorthodox compounds built by members of the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, also known as the FLDS, a serendipitous encounter. A serendipitous encounter with former FLDS member Joby Cook introduced me to his brothers and friends, including Ephraim Barlow, Laredo Barlow, and his brothers Ashley and Jordan, who all sit with us here today. I think we might be missing Ashley and Jordan. I don't know if they made it quite yet, but we have Jordan and Laredo right here. I'm sorry, not Jordan and Laredo, Ephraim and Laredo. I'm looking at this. Ephraim, who has been he's been the person that I have the strongest relationship with in this project. He was the person that I communicated with the most, that I developed the strongest bond with. And so having him here today is really important, and having him be a part of this discussion is really important. And this work obviously wouldn't have happened without the boys, but it really wouldn't have happened without him. He plays the most integral role in this project and organizing the boys and making this, this work happen in a meaningful way. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Anyway, so to get back to this, the Crick in part became for me a call to unity in an era of polarization, an opportunity to experience the beauty, the fallibility, and humanity of this idiosyncratic brotherhood. These young men inhabit a desert expanse under open skies, suspended in a liminal space between hell and paradise. My hope is that the photographs offer a bridge between our world and theirs, inviting viewers to witness not only the care and empathy, but to consider who is seen and who is not. With that said, we will now have our broader discussion of the Crick in our panel talk. Thank you. Thank you all.
On stage. Well, thank you so much, Jim, for taking us on that photographic journey. It was really interesting. I didn't know that much about some of these other projects, and so now knowing the Crick really well, it's interesting to kind of look at those, and I definitely see ties between some of your earlier bodies of work and the Crick. I'm going to give a brief intro of our other panelists. Jim has already been introduced, but Judith Freeman is the author of 9 books, including the novel Redwater, which was named one of the 10 best books of 2002 by Newsweek magazine, and Set for Life, which won the Western Heritage Award from the Cowboy Hall of Fame. So that's exciting. I didn't know there was a Cowboy Hall of Fame. Learn something new every day. Her fiction focuses on stories set in the landscape of the American West, and she's also published a memoir, The Latter Days, and a biography of the mystery writer Raymond Chandler. Her newest novel, White Mules, will be published next year. She's the recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship in Fiction and divides her time between Los Angeles and a small farm in southern Idaho. Ephraim Barlow is from Utah and one of the young men featured in the Crick, and Jim talked about how integral Ephraim was in this work, so I'm excited to get to know a little bit more about that relationship. And then Roman Bateman is the author of a letter in the Crick catalog. He was excommunicated from the FLDS church in high school, after which he sold everything and wandered Alberta and British Columbia and Canada for several years. After college, Roman returned to the Crick, where he now makes art when he isn't wandering in the desert. And I just wanted to start this panel discussion. We have a short excerpt from the essay that Judith Freeman wrote to sort of frame the Crick photographs, and I wonder if you'd be willing to read that excerpt for us.
Everything is red in this country, red or orange or mauve or some shade thereof. The rocks and buttes and the scree and scarps and the wind-sculpted pinnacles they call hoodoos, which look like human figures wrapped tightly in robes, with their featureless heads protruding against the sky. Everything all red in this land, the color of rust or dried blood. The sheer stone walls of the tall mountains forming a backdrop to the Crick are lit by the setting sun as I ride back with the boys 6 hours later to the place where we began. And the curtain of red cliffs looks illuminated from within, like fire rocks burning in the sunset. Many of the houses in this town once had badges near the front door that said Zion, announcing their owner's belief in this place as the anointed land chosen by God for his favored people. The Zion badges are now mostly gone, another sign of the prophet's fall. But the belief in the world of flaming rocks has not faded. Some evenings, it's said, spirits manifest themselves in these rocks. Emerging from the stones and the shadows, and in the light falling upon the face of the cliffs, one can see the face of Jesus and the prophets of old, or the shapes and forms of wingless angels and floating heads. Such is the power of the land depicted in these photographs, with the lightning-struck pines and truncated stumps and the rivers running red, where the whorls of rocks and the whorls of stone and water and trees cast a furious, surging beauty. That is what Jim Mangan has captured in these pictures of both the changing boys and their changing world.
Thank you, Judith. So from talking to you before this panel, I know that you were introduced to Jim through his publisher, but could you tell us a little bit about what attracted you to this project? Why did you decide that this was something that you wanted to take on?
I was approached by the publisher of this project, Kevin Messina, Twin Palms Press, who said that he had gotten this extraordinary body of work from a photographer, and it was haunting him. Would I be interested in looking at those photographs? And because I come from Utah, and I come from a background which is kind of understanding of the culture that these boys come from, when I saw the photographs, I thought, I'm really interested. I'm really just kind of transfixed by this subject matter, the way that Jim was photographing these boys and their world, what they came from, what they were doing with their lives. And I was immediately excited about becoming involved in this project, which has been just a wonderful experience.
Thank you so much. Ephraim, you're the subject of a lot of the photographs that Jim took. What made you trust Jim with telling part of your story, and what was it like to have him follow you through the desert? Did you feel like you were putting on a show, or did it feel very natural to have him with your group?
We were definitely putting on a show half the time. But yeah, I would say a lot of it was natural. We just kind of went about what we would normally do, and some of it was definitely out of hand because there was this guy from California that was taking pictures. Other than that.
So how much of the life that he was showing felt like, sort of what you would be doing on a daily basis, and what is sort of missing from that picture? I mean, we don't see a lot of pictures actually of you interacting with the Short Creek community. How much are you sort of just out on your own at this point, and how much, what's going on when Jim's not following you around with a camera?
It mostly consists of work, and then we do this stuff like every weekend at least, but it's, as far as being in with the community, it's not really, it's kind of just a town. It's not really any different than anywhere else besides our background. Other than that, we have friends and family, and then all the unknown.
And Jim, how was it keeping up with the boys? Because there's some astounding feats of athleticism in these images. I don't know how you were able to kind of physically capture them. I mean, you'd worked a lot with motion, but they must have tested the limits of your photographic capabilities sometimes.
Yeah. Is this working? Yeah. Well, look, no doubt they slowed down a little bit for me. And I'm probably making that sound better on my side of things than them. I mean, when I started photographing them, I was 45 years old. And we're talking, I mean, you were 17 when I met you. He lied to me and told me he was 18. Because I told them at the time I didn't want to photograph anybody under the age of 18. I was trying to, like, or I had to meet your parents and that kind of thing. And I came to find out that, they were 16 to probably 22, around that age at that time. There was a whole range. But, in a lot of circumstances, we're in a certain area, and I'm able to just navigate that, and it's a little more controlled. There were the situations where, they've taken me on hikes or horseback rides, and I want to say they taught me how to ride a horse, but I'm no horseman. But they took me on some pretty crazy rides. For somebody my level, for them it's nothing. But for me it was definitely it was a challenge, and it goes back to I don't know. I have an athletic background, but again, as an older person, a middle-aged guy coming into their world as these young men, I mean, I had to really dig deep to keep up with them. And I can tell you, and I don't think you think about it this way, or any of the other boys do, but the more I immersed myself in the Crick and the more I got to meet people and know people, I knew these boys were special when I met them, but it reaffirmed that in a major way. I knew that they were a special group within the community. The way that they were conducting themselves, the way that they interacted with their environment, the way they challenged each other, but then the community and the bond that they had amongst one another, and how they were always willing to share or give up something for one another, but at the same time mercifully give each other shit. I mean, they were I don't know, they had every kind of ingredient that as somebody who likes to tell a story myself, they had all the ingredients in the most natural way to tell a beautiful story.
You can really tell in the photographs that there's a special sense of community that I think is missing for a lot of the world, which is part of the reason why I think the photographs resonate so much. Roman, can you tell us a little bit about how you became involved in the project?
I became involved in the project because Jim has excellent timing. Literally, the project was born with him driving into Colorado City and meeting Joby, one of the kids in the photograph. And then he turned right around and happened to meet me. He was right on the corner of where I lived, and I was pulling art out of my car. And we just started talking, and then I realized that he's one of the rare people that I wanted to work with, because most of the people that are interested in stuff down there, it's really salacious. They just want to draw more negative attention to what you guys already know about. And the community is in its renaissance right now, and so we're just kind of over that shit, And so he does such a good job of not exploiting people. He would care for the people in the community over taking a good photograph. And to me, that makes me want to be involved in it.
Thank you.
I think that's a testament to the kind of photographer that Jim is. And it's one of the things that I sensed about him too, is that, this was a photograph, it's a documentary project in some ways, but I could tell that you thought of the boys as your collaborators rather than sort of you coming from a place of social hierarchy.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I have to note is I wasn't seeking them out. That happened naturally when I met Joby. He was just riding his BMX bike, and I was taking a photograph of one of the compounds, and that was my purpose. I was doing a photographic architectural survey, and that led to meeting, this group of young men, these boys, and so I was open to maybe something else. I'm always open with every project to a tangent or something else presenting itself that might be the actual thing you're looking for. And in this case, that was true. And the architecture became a secondary piece, an ancillary piece to the work, an important piece, but not as important as the boys. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's lovely the way you're taking photographs of a community, but then in doing so, you build a community around yourself, and you can see that represented by the people here on stage. I want to make sure that we have time if there are questions also from the audience. Does anyone have a question that they want to ask our panel? If so, you're welcome to make your way to one of the microphones at the front. If not, I have a few more questions that I can ask, but please feel free. If I see you out of the corner of my eye, I'll give you a chance to talk. But we only have a few minutes left. But as you think about this work, the project kind of took place from 2019 until 2024. Was that when you finished?
2018 to 2023.
Okay, 2018 to 2023. So there's been a few years now to see some changes, and just kind of opening up to the panel as a whole, what changes have taken place since the end of this project, either in your own lives or the lives of the boys depicted, or in the Short Creek community? What would we encounter now if we were to go to some of these same landscapes?
I feel like, I mean, you want to answer that?
Yeah, Ephraim, how's your life changed since the end of the
Roman's
project?
the one that still lives there. He'd know better than me.
Yeah, you can talk about
In a landscape sense, it's getting pretty hammered by side-by-sides and tourists, and it's sort of becoming Zion number 2. And it's not very peaceful at this point, but most Renaissance are not very peaceful. And the culture itself is, if there are still quote-unquote polygamists, they're more underground, so you don't really, now it just looks like a redneck town, you know, just like a lot of the small towns in Utah. But it is changing really fast, and in a lot of ways, to me, it's pretty alarming because there's not a sense of care for the vegetation, and, you know, people painting rocks and graffiti and stuff like that. So that's kind of one of the reasons that I like doing this stuff, is to just kind of create some awareness that that stuff matters. And ironically, it's people that grow up around it that often don't appreciate it because it's just there all the time. But it's definitely something I'm concerned a lot about, is how damaged things get. The petroglyphs have been shot off the rocks in a lot of cases and written over with carvings and stuff. So I certainly would prefer that there's some caretaking down there. It's really hard to, everything's so remote that it's hard to get the state to protect things and to watch them all the time, because the town is wild. You never know.
It is fun.
Yeah.
Do you still have contact with a lot of your friends in the photographs? Is that community of, you know, you boys still alive and well, or have you kind of scattered as you've moved to different places in Utah?
We've scattered, but some of us have also grown closer. So we're definitely, like, I'm in contact with all of them, and we're all still good friends.
Great, thank you. It looks like we do have a question from the audience over here. If you'd like to step up with the microphone.
I thank you. It's a real fascinating story that's dimensional and beautiful and community engaged, which is wonderful. I'm wondering how the collaborative aspect permeated the final selection of the prints and the narrative that was built around it. Just curious as to how you continued beyond the taking of the images into what we're seeing and hearing today.
How the final selection was chosen, essentially, for the book. I mean, I ultimately had I think, you know, I chose probably 650 photos that I felt were worthy of being in the book. There's 72 in the book. So I chose, around 650 photographs to be in the book. And initially, that was my initial edit. After I sent a smaller edit to Twin Palms. And I think, as a photographer and just understanding the digital world and how things disseminate so quickly and sort of out of control, I was very protective of the photograph. So I didn't make all the photographs, I didn't allow the boys to be privy to all the photographs initially. I would show them some, but I wasn't openly sending them to them, and I think there was a level of frustration there. But in the end, before we were published, before the book got published, and there were drafts being produced of the book. Every time there was a new draft, I sent you the drafts. I would show you the drafts, and I would make sure that they felt comfortable with what was being shown or what might be published. And eventually I sent them, I still have to send them the larger edit. I haven't done that, but I've sent them all the photographs they have images of all the photographs from the book. And so there was a little bit of, to answer your question, when it came down to the final sequencing, the final edits, I did seek out their stamp of approval. And so, but the real collaboration existed in what we did together on a daily basis. Their level of role playing, which I call the real life and imaginary, they may have gone and taken it a little further, obviously because I was there, but they were doing this before me, and they're doing it after me, right? I mean, you're still doing this.
It gets even crazier.
There you go. So you're taking it to new. You're testing your abilities constantly as a young man, right? You're constantly testing your abilities, and that's something that I did too, physically. And there's a mental and physical aspect to it, and so that's something that when I stepped into this and I met you guys, I was like, I can be a kid again. I can join in. I can't do a lot of things you guys can do, but I can document it and I can appreciate it, right? And I understand how difficult it is. And so anyway, it was very much collaborative in that sense, but I think in the end, in the post-production, I'm going to say it was the story mostly that I wanted to tell in the way I wanted to tell it. But I wanted to be as true as I could to who they are and talk about their performance, but talk about them in their real lives as well. And so this is my perspective of who they are, essentially.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
You've been so patient. We'll take this one last question before we finish up.
Okay. Some of these photos, like the one up there right now, reminds me of the 1980s film, The Man from Snowy River, which was one of my favorite movies. I love that.
Is Ashley here yet? No? I think that's one of Ashley's favorite movies. We've talked about that movie.
And then just a question for the guys from Short Crick. What do you guys want us to know about your community? You said, all these negative things, perceptions that people have, but having lived in that community, I'm sure that you love it. Tell us about your community and what you love about it.
It's not much different than any other community. It definitely has a different history, but the thing that I'm always surprised about as an artist is whenever I talk to someone, someone directly in their lineage has had some pretty wild things happen. And you may not know about it, but everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And everyone's grandfather's done things, everyone's grandmother's done things. And it's just nice to get out of there and realize that it doesn't really matter. Do you have compassion for someone or not? Because we're all dealing with the same stuff.
Ephraim, do you have anything you'd like to add? What you'd like people to know about Short Creek? I know you don't live there now, but you spent some time there.
I think that what Roman was talking about earlier, as far as the place just getting hammered, I think that, like I said, it's a crazy and fun place, but at the same time, you can go there and have respect for things and not just try to ruin everything and trash everything. But it is a really good town. And I know we probably don't want to make it more famous, but it's happening. But it's a really great town. There's a lot of cool stuff there that you won't see very many places, and just try to respect it.
I think that really interestingly loops us back to the beginning of your presentation, which is about environmental stewardship and thinking about things that might someday vanish. So I think that's a good kind of full circle moment for us to end on. Thank you so much for your attention, your participation, and please join us in the gallery for the refreshments and for the reception after this event. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to talk to our panelists there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.